Okay, welcome to our installation video how-to on a dual shade installation. This will be utilizing a DC motor system, and we're going to be utilizing a dual shade fascia setup with dual shade fascia brackets. What we have here is essentially a wall mount application. There's no depth on this window whatsoever to install anything inside the window casement or frame. So we're going to be installing the system above on the wall, which we would refer to as an outside bracket or an outside mount installation. I've already measured this out just so that obviously it was measured to get the shade ordered. What I did here is I measured from the outside of the frame to the outside of the frame, ended up with 75.5 inches going outside to outside. What I want to do is I want to make sure that the fabric overlaps the frame. So if you have a frame, if you have trim, you have molding, you want to make sure that the shade fabric, this is for a roll shade obviously, that it overlaps the frame, essentially is even with the frame on the edge. So with the bracket to fabric deduction of 1 inch on each side, it's actually 7/8 on the DC system. I just added 1 inch to each side to make sure that I had the fabric covering the trim. So what I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to check to see how level the window is, because if I can utilize the window frame as my guide, it's going to make things a lot easier. So this is just really just maybe a touch off. It might just be a little bit low on the left. So I'll account for that on that end, but it's pretty well level. So what I'm really going to do, just to make it very simple, is I'm going to come over here to the right side. I'm going to come 1 inch past my frame. Okay, and I'm just going to make myself a little mark here so I know where the top of the frame is, and I know where my inch is. I'm just going to put a little bit of a corner there, and I'm just going to match my fascia bracket corner up with that. I'm actually just going to go up just a hair. Okay, because I don't want to have that fascia bracket hit here. It's fairly wide, so I want to make sure I'm just a little bit, it's really going to set right on top of there. Okay, but I got my inch past on this side. I'm going to go to the other side. We're going to go 1 inch past there. Make our mark. Okay. Now we know where to set our brackets before we start putting in screws. The screws that I'm using for this particular application are 2-inch hex head self-tapping screws. This is a commercial application. I'm hoping that I hit the steel studs behind here. These self-tappers are perfect for hitting steel studs in a commercial application such as this. Again, typically you're going to be in a residential application, and just a standard wood screw will suffice, but this is what I'm using today. I'm going to grab myself a bracket. This motor is on the right side, so I want to make sure I have a motor side bracket. Don't accidentally grab the wrong side and try and install it. Just going to make more work for you. So this is a motor side for a right motor system. So like I said, I'm just going to really kind of set this right on top. I'm going to follow my mark, come through the front here, and let's see what we hit. We hit something. Let's see what we can do here. Beautiful. That's the way it should work. Okay, so took a little bit of effort, but I got through that steel stud and I grabbed it good. And so now we want to make sure, before we put in the next screw, make sure that this is level. So that's why I just do the screw at the very bottom. You can now put your bullet level next to your bracket. Make sure that your bracket is nice and level, straight up and down, before you install your next screw. If I'm lucky, we'll get steel top and bottom here. Yep, we got it. Okay. All right, so now we have that one done. Let's go to the idler side, the left side. And again, just based on this window being maybe just a hair low on the left, I'm just going to move it just a bit off the top of the trim here, the frame. Don't need much. It was pretty close. Okay, so we've hit steel here. I'm going to give it a little bit more elbow grease. Make sure I got it lined up. Tighten it down, okay? Again, get our bullet level here. Check to make sure that it's level. Okay, perfect. All right, so we're good for the last screw. Okay, good and sturdy, level, ready to go. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to drill. In this particular case, we have power on the opposite side of this wall. So I'm just going to drill a little hole through the wall here. That way we can run the power cords of the shades through the wall to where the power is located on the opposite side. And that way we'll have our power source taken care of and access to that power source. And a little bit of installation. Okay. All right, so now we're good. Probably have to use a little bit of a rod or something just to kind of get through there and pull our power cord through there. But that should take care of that. Next thing for us to do, make sure, always have a wet rag. Just some mild soap, dishwashing soap, and some water. Always have this with you. It's a great way to keep your hands clean. Also, it's a great way to wipe marks off of the wall and any debris that you've left behind. I've got quite a bit there to clean up. Taking a vacuum to that is going to be best before I start wiping it, but always have one of these to keep things cleaned up. I'm going to go with the blackout shade first. Typically, you're going to want the blackout shade closest to the wall or to the glass. Reason for that is less light bleed on the sides because it's close to the wall. The other reason for that is if somebody wants to utilize the blackout side channels, then they don't obviously get in the way of the shade screen, because the blackout side channels are going to be mounted to the wall, and then the shade screen will fall in front of the channels. So then you don't have an issue there with the side channels and the shade screen. Okay. Now, want to make sure that our idler end is out all the way. Okay, make sure it's fully out. Turn it so that it is. Wipe off my mark here. Insert there. We're going to come up and around here. Let me get my cord out of the way. Guide it onto the bracket like so. We're all set there. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do before I install the lower shade is I'm going to get this power cord through the wall. because I don't want to have to try and do it after the lower shade is in. It's going to be a little bit more difficult having that lower shade in the way, and I certainly don't want to risk damaging the fabric. So let me work on that. We'll be right back. Okay, so what we've done, I went ahead and made a hole above for this particular shade. You can't see it. We have our hole here for the lower shade, so we can just run our motor wires through to where the power supply is. So we got that squared away. Real important, do not install the lower shade until you've fine-tuned the limits on the upper shade. You cannot get to the limits on the upper shade if the lower shade is there. So I just realized that myself the hard way. So we took it down, and we're going to do it correctly. So you have a hot box that we supply. Make sure you always have your hot box. This is a great tool. This has your power supply, your DC power supply. I have it plugged into 110. This is our 24 volts going into our hot box. Make sure you connect your Phoenix connector, which is provided with the IZMC, the interface. Make sure you connect your Phoenix connector, the small one, okay, which is your output. Polarity doesn't matter here. So again, you can correct that in the driver. You can reverse the motor direction of the driver. So don't worry about polarity here. It's not going to matter. Just get those terminated, make sure they're good and tight. And I'm going to plug that into the hot box. And what I want to do now is, since this shade from the factory, this is the top limit from the factory, okay? We want to adjust that top limit down to here, because since this is the back shade, there's no point in having this fabric way up here. It really needs to be sitting down here. So let me get my wand and we'll start that process. Make sure you have your motor limit adjusting tool. This comes with the shade system. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and reduce my upper limit. Okay, I don't want it coming up that high, especially given the fact that this trim sticks out a little bit. You know, I want to have it just kind of resting just a little bit in front at the very tip here. So since this is a motor right, we're going to want to follow the instructions. This is part of the quick reference guide. No, I'm sorry, it's not. It's actually the motor limit setting instructions. So make sure you find these on the website. These will be on the, which tab under dealers for dealers, Eric? It's the dealer support tab, am I right? Okay, so dealer support tab. Go down to the DCS hardwired or the DC hardwired product. You'll have your motor limit setting instructions. You'll also have your quick reference guide, which helps take you through a lot of this as well. You'll find your driver there and other things that are useful too. Since this is a motor right, the green limit's going to be my upper limit, and I actually want to turn it counterclockwise to reduce. So I'm going to go to my green limit, which is the one in the back. Okay, and I'm going to go counterclockwise on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it down, run it back up. See, and I can kind of see what kind of adjustment I make in here. That's pretty much where I want it to be, okay, right there. So that's good. Let's do our down limit. Let's see how that's looking. And you should only have to fine tune, again, the limits. They're preset from the factory, top and bottom. And you should only have to fine tune the limits. That, to me, that's probably a little bit long. In this particular case, I want to have the bottom bar or the hem bar be even with the trim at the bottom, and that way it frames the window all the way around the same. So I'm going to go to my yellow limit. I'm going to decrease that limit as well by going counterclockwise. So I'm going to run it up. Run it up a little bit more. I'm going to turn a little bit more. There we go. That's where we want to be. It's perfect. Okay. So now we have this shade ready to go. It's set. I'm going to run it back up, and that way I can focus on installing the screen shade in front. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and route this through the wall. You don't need to watch us do that. When we come back, we'll install the screen shade, set limits. We're just about done. We're ready for the installation of the screen shade. Again, make sure your idler end is all the way out. Also, make sure when you're installing a DC powered system, you're going to want to have your green and yellow tabs facing down. Your wire needs to be up. Okay, so on a hardwired system, these colored tabs are always going to be down. Make sure that the wire is going in the opposite direction on a DC hardwired system. Battery powered system is opposite. Okay. Get it into the idler bearing here. Okay. Come up and around. And I got my hem bar stuck on the tab there. There we go. Okay. Guide it onto the bracket. Make sure it's flush and tight to the bracket here. That way you know it's on all the way. Okay, the screen shade from the factory is just a little bit above the blackout shade. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it down just a hair. So again, what I'm going to do is get my Phoenix connector on here. Let me snip these just so they don't short out. Cut them down to about 1/4 inch. Okay, that way they're not exposed once you get them into the Phoenix connector. Again, make sure these are wide open. Make sure the screw terminals are facing up. Okay, again, not worried about polarity. I'm just going to get them in there all the way. I'm going to tighten them down. Okay, we're ready for our hot box. And dropping all my stuff on the floor here. Okay, let's run it and see. Okay, it's a little bit high. Let me grab my wand. Since we're increasing the limit, now we're adding to the limit. We actually want to go clockwise on this. So the back limit was my green. I want to take my green and go clockwise just a little bit. Sorry, counterclockwise. My bad. Okay, counterclockwise to increase the upper limit with the green limit. Okay, we're good here. These are pretty much where I want them to be. Let's just check the lower. Make sure that's where I want it. We'll probably have to shorten that up a little bit. I'm going to go to my yellow, which is my lower limit. Yeah, so that's a little bit long. Okay, let's go to that. Let's do that. Now, if you're adding to the limit while you have the button pressed in that same direction, it's going to just continue to go in that direction if you have the power going in that direction. So I know I'm turning it the wrong way. Let's go back the other way, which is counterclockwise. If you're reducing the limit, it's not going to start coming back up. You've got to come back up past it and then go down. See, so I'm just going to kind of keep checking as I'm spinning. Okay, and I moved it a little bit there. So let's come back up. I'm just going to add to it now. Let's reduce it a little bit more. Okay, now I can just keep the power on and just add to it. Okay, make sure that it is covering the trim here. Perfect. Okay, that's what we want. So your limits are set on both shade systems. All we have to do now is get the fascia on. Well, I'm actually going to feed this wire through. Once I feed that wire through, then we'll get the fascia on. So we'll take a short break so we can feed the wire through, and then we'll get the fascia on. We're done. Thanks. We are all set. Ready for the fascia. On the fascia, if I hold it up correctly here, you'll see there's a hook at the top in the extrusion. There's also a ridge here on the extrusion. So the hook is designed to go up and over the face of the bracket. Then the ridge at the bottom is designed to go past the tab at the bottom of the fascia. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook this end on at the top, come out at a slight angle to do it. I'm going to hook it here, make sure both tops are hooked. Now, to get it to connect here at the bottom, I'm just going to pull it down just to get it past that tab. So just pull down to get it past that tab and push past it. And it will lock into place. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to pull down to get the reveal past the tab underneath the fascia bracket. And then there's a notch in the fascia bracket that reveal snaps into. So we are now complete and done. The rest of this can be, you can watch the rest of this as far as how to do the integration side through our other videos. So look for those. At this point in time, we've got a dual shade DC powered Intelli-Shade system installed. Job well done. Thanks. Catch you next time.